Welcome to Open Dialogue here on Ahlebait TV. I'm your host, Fahima Mohammed. Welcome everyone that's watching from across, the world, watching from wherever you are. I want to wish you a warm welcome this evening. And I just want to say I thank you for your support, for your comments, for some of the calls that we do receive and the questions. We do have these programs only to assist you, and we invite guests to speak which are sharing their views and their opinions, which doesn't necessarily coincide with the channel views, but we do provide the space for them to share their thoughts. And today we have another guest with another topic. I'd love to introduce you to my guest, Raghad Bakir. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, I think we've lost her, but hopefully she'll come back soon. So today I just want to. Oh, Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Raghad? I thought
How are you?
I'm very well. I thought I lost you there for a moment.
Yes, I'm
Thank
afraid
you so
so.
much for joining me. We will be having the Syed join us as well in a moment's time. But before we have him on, I just want to introduce our topic for tonight, which is building and maintaining positive relationships. When we talk about relationships, we automatically assume spouse relationships, we automatically assume, romantic relationships, but we're not just talking about that. And more importantly, we're talking about general relationships. It may be with your spouse, definitely. It could be with your children, with your siblings, with your colleagues at work, as well as with friends. And I think that's a really big one is, friendships. Because generally, as psychologists, they do say that, the quality of your life is determined by the standard of your relationships that you maintain around you. Now, when we were speaking, Raghad, before the show, we decided on this topic because it was important. Can you quickly highlight why do you think it is important to build and maintain positive relationships?
Assalamu alaikum. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on your show today. And I feel so privileged to be on with you. Um, Building positive relationships with people just makes your life generally easier, doesn't it? It gives you a happier life. It gives you a safer space as well. When you've got so much negativity going on around you,
Yeah,
generally you're not going to feel happy. You're not going to be happy. So, understanding others and having good communication with others, that's how it starts. An understanding, good communication, and then that leads to positive relationships. And especially nowadays with technology and how we are communicating with each other, I feel like communication is kind of breaking down a lot, especially now with like things like
definitely.
most communication
Absolutely.
is done through
No, I love what
email
you
and
said, and I
so
absolutely.
you
I
sometimes
just quickly want to also remind the viewers that this is a live call-in show. If you do want to call in with any questions for myself or my guest tonight, please do, call. The number should be at the bottom of your screen. As well as the reason why we chose this topic is because so much has happened during the last year and a half, even 2 years, especially with the pandemic. And a lot of us may have either grown closer to our relationships around us. Some of us have maybe grown further apart, not just because of the distance, but the fact that we realize who are really there for us. And does our circumstance determine our relationships? That could be external or internal, because we also grow in time. We differ with our experiences. Now, as we were talking about, making it easier for our life to have good relationships, could you maybe talk a little bit further as to how is it going to make our lives a little bit easier and better for us to have, positive relationships? And that word positive as well, I want you to sort of, elaborate on that a little bit more.
well, as I was saying, positive relationships always start off with knowing how to communicate. It starts off with communication. You can't have a positive relationship if you don't have an understanding between you. You
Hmm.
can't have a
Hmm.
positive relationship if you misinterpret everything the other person says. And communication is always between at least two people. And communication starts even before a person talks. So, for example, just by your body language, just by the way you're looking at me, is you communicating something with me. And the person on the receiving end can very easily misinterpret what you are trying to
Mm.
communicate to them based upon what is inside them. If they are a positive person and they look
Absolutely.
at themselves in a positive light, then they will look at any way of communication that is going on. They will look at it in a positive sense. And if they are a person who has, issues or is carrying some baggage or is, even just doesn't love themselves enough, then every little thing that you do, every action, they will take it upon themselves and feel that you are trying to offend them or hurt them in a way, or something like that. So positive relationships always start off with communication, and it's very important to always ask the question of, what did you mean when you said this? I
Mm.
got hurt. You hurt me. What did you mean? And then the other person can edit the misunderstanding. They can edit your interpretation. Did you say to me X, Y, Z? The other person will tell you, actually, I meant A, B, C. So it's that interpretation has been completely edited, but it's all based on what the other person is thinking within them. It starts off from within as well. So yeah,
I love that.
positive
I
relationships are
absolutely
very
love that.
important. So you always have to think
Definitely.
about the other person when you're communicating. When you're communicating, think about the other person. What is going through their mind? What baggage are they carrying? What are they thinking of themselves? And don't take things too personally.
I think it's very interesting that you raised that, and it's very, very important. And I wish more of us had more of that way of thinking and being, because as you said, we need to communicate. But when we communicate, sometimes we don't realize how we communicate, and we do project. And what we project is what is inside of us. And then we also listen in a particular way. We listen either where, like you said, depending on how we feel inside, either dismissive, either we feeling, victimized, either we feeling
Defensive.
like as if someone is doing that. Absolutely. Defensiveness is one of the greatest things, or the misunderstandings, because we're not actually asking deeper questions, and all of a sudden we're getting hurt. All of a sudden we're feeling offended because we don't realize that, what the other person is saying or doing. So it is a two-way thing. One also projects what they're feeling inside, and the other also listens depending on who and what they are inside. Now, when you talk about the internal dialogue of a person, with regards to how in which they communicate. Now, how is it sometimes, this life is really difficult, right? Especially in the last,
Mm.
couple of years when we've had the lockdown, we're still, under quite a lot of restriction. And, when we communicate, sometimes we do it obviously a lot of the time now online, even without the pandemic. A lot of us are using social media as a way and means to actually communicate to each other, especially, close relationships. Do you think that that's important to still maintain that sort of like face to face, even now if it's on Skype, even now if it's like, FaceTime, it's still a possibility? Do you think it makes a difference with the type of communication, or do you think that it doesn't really matter if you've already got a strong bond or you've got good communication skills?
So what you said is, for example, if you have strong bonds, then that's fine. When you're having like just some banter or just a conversation with your friends, then it's okay. But when you have something really important to say, or when you're trying
Mm,
to resolve a conflict, writing is just words. There's no
mm,
feelings with it. There's no tone. There is no there's no body language. So it's so hard to come across, to put your point across in just words. For example, the word what. It can be what? It can be what? It can be what? It can be what? So just looking at that word, So if you can't, if you can't do a voice call, at least send a voice note. Just the tone
yes.
makes a huge difference. So sometimes I'm sure there's people in your life, and there's many people in my life that, whatever I say to them, they will take it in a negative way. They will be so
Oh,
defensive,
yes.
even if I'm trying to say, even if I'm trying to, say something nice about them or thank them, they will take that in a defensive way and say, "What did you mean by that?" Also saying, "Oh, for example, I'm really glad you're doing this. It's amazing nowadays. It's been really good," or whatever. And the other person will say, "What do you mean? I've been there for you this whole time," and it'll automatically turn into an argument. There's a person who's always defensive. So these kind of people you have to be very wary of, because tone is very important. So if you're going to say, you've been great this week, that can sound very, patronizing, maybe in a text message. okay, I've been great this week. So what did you mean? Did you mean I was not great last week, for example? So yeah, I think tone is really
I'm loving
important.
this conversation, Raghad.
Yeah, try to get that in check as well. But yeah, there's no harm. There's no harm, especially now with the pandemic. You can't see people as often. You're still worried about passing things on, and some people are, not everyone's vaccinated yet. Some people are more vulnerable. So there's no harm in that. But try your best to try to
Definitely. No, I hear you there. I think you've raised so much already, and you really have sort of touched on things that I think we all can relate to when it comes to being misunderstood. When you're trying to speak to somebody and they take it in the wrong way, they are defensive, as well as they think that you're hurting them when they know that you're your friend, and sometimes they need to just hear what is being reflected. And me as a coach personally, sometimes it can be very, very difficult for me to have friendships because I have this coach cap on constantly where I'm analyzing and, I can maybe, and I'm a different type of coach where I can actually say things where it's kind of like cutthroat, I'll tell you exactly how it is, but sometimes it helps people in their journey to move forward. But that's okay if we have that understanding. But in a friendship, they don't necessarily always appreciate that or need that. So I get that.
Also, as well, because you're a coach, people have come to you for advice. People have come to you because they want you to give them feedback. But sometimes when it comes from a friend or from a spouse or from a family member,
Definitely.
randomly, it can be offensive because you haven't asked for their opinion. So it's very important to be mindful. Sometimes you do want to, give someone advice or, warn someone of something, but they haven't come and asked you for it. So they can take offense to that, and you have to be very mindful of that. So yeah, I mean,
I've
with
learned
you,
that the hard way. Yeah, no, I've
yeah,
learned that the hard way, definitely, because like I said, you can get really confused up. Exactly.
Yeah, so
The other thing was during this time, okay, it's fine to build relationships and maintain them in a positive way when you actually have relationships. But I know that when I even put this post out, I had a few comments saying, well, when we have friends, we stick with friends. What about the ones that find it really difficult to have friends? And there's a really a case of loneliness. It's a huge thing which we don't talk about. We can even have a lot of people around us, to be honest. It doesn't mean that we are actually there fulfilled in relationships, even in friendships, or even if we had a huge house of family, because we just don't connect. But there is people that just don't have other people around them. And I think, in this time, we did notice, the ones that, had that support system, was struggling with a support system, or didn't have that support system at all. Now, how is it that people can overcome, because you can't just create friendships easily, for example, and not everybody has even that family unit all the time around them. So if an individual is struggling by themselves, they do have a case of loneliness, which is very, very common, and it's widely spread, and unfortunately we don't address it enough. How would you sort of go about assessing this and addressing this?
So again, it's going back to what I said earlier about the communication and people misunderstanding each other. So as the next part I was going to say is, when you have a person like that who's always being defensive, or people even sometimes say a toxic person who's always being negative, does that mean you're going to cut them out of your life? So if you're going to cut everyone out that's going to give you bad vibes, anyone that's going to be slightly negative, anyone that's annoying, then yes, sometimes you can end up lonely, and sometimes no, it's not by choice. I understand, but I mean, generally speaking, if you're going to cut people out because of the way that they're communicating with you, then that's not going to be the answer. The best thing to do is to always understand where people are coming from. Where is this defensiveness coming from? Where is this anger coming from? What are they holding inside them? What is triggering them? What's the trigger? Is there something from their childhood that, okay, every time you say something to them, even if though you mean it's positive, what is triggering them for them to give you this reaction? So if you understand the other person, then it helps you to improve your relationships and hopefully cut less people out of your life, and hopefully help you in terms of not being lonely. And understanding others always starts off with understanding yourself. If you have an understanding of yourself, and you can understand what's going on inside you, then you can actually be empathetic towards others. You can learn to understand that not everyone's going to be like you. Not everyone's had the same journey as you. So if you understand yourself that, I've had a hard time and I've been through a lot, and you know what, everyone else probably has too. And it's probably not the same as mine. And maybe I feel like their journey is easier than mine because I've been through this, this, this. But you don't know what, a pain is pain. Pain can't be
Yes.
measured, or trauma is trauma. It can't be measured. Just because you've been through a bigger trauma in your childhood and that person's been through a smaller trauma in their childhood, it's still trauma. And how you react to that trauma is different. Everyone reacts differently. Some people become stronger. Some people become, weaker and have triggers and, misinterpretations, misconceptions. So in terms of loneliness, you were asking, what was the exact question? I've actually forgotten now.
Well, you did answer it when it came to,
Mhm.
sometimes taking accountability with regards to sometimes we are the cause of our loneliness if we are, for example,
Mhm.
cutting people out. But then you did say that, sometimes it's not our, problems for having that issue, because it just kind of happens with certain people where they are unfortunate. And sometimes they do find themselves where they cannot connect with people for whatever their reasons, and they're not cutting people out, but there's just loneliness because they've never formed close bonds with anyone. And there are a lot of people that do require more. Or do you think that there is maybe people around them, but they don't see it because maybe their need is slightly more of, sort of like, more extreme, like it's something that it shouldn't be, when they do have people around them but they don't see it, but what they need is something a little bit
Yeah.
closer, because there's a lot of psychological analysis on this, but I know that we've spoken about this. So what would be your thoughts on this? Because it's really important that we do discuss loneliness when it's not your fault, you've not put yourself in that situation, you try to connect with people and people
Yeah.
just don't reach you back like you sort of expect them to. What do you do then? Like, how do you look at yourself to fulfill the needs that you would want from others to fulfill for you?
Okay. I'm going to start off with saying you deserve what you feel you deserve. So sometimes you are the person who is sabotaging every relationship because of what's going on inside you. You don't love yourself enough, and therefore you don't allow anyone to love you. You don't feel like you deserve enough or you deserve better, and you don't allow other people to give it to you. And you don't mean to do that. You're craving the love. You're
Yes,
craving the
yes.
respect. You're craving friendship. You're craving to bond. But you need to get to know yourself first. You need to love yourself first. You need to forgive yourself. I don't mean forgive yourself because you've done something majorly wrong. No, but
Yeah.
forgive yourself for all the shortcomings that you feel that you have done in your life. Forgive yourself, accept yourself, and give yourself grace. Okay? And that's only then can you allow others to love you, to forgive you, and to give you grace. Okay, so that just start from within. If you can't love yourself, you're not going to allow anyone to love you.
I
And
really love
giving
that.
yourself giving yourself grace, accepting, you're not perfect. None of us is perfect. No one is perfect. So understand that actually done is better than perfect. What I've done
Mhm.
here, what I've done so far, we have milestones in our life. Sometimes we reach a certain age, we're like, oh my God, I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50, and still haven't done this. I'm still not, in the same position as the person next door. That's fine. You look at what you have done, what you have accomplished, where you've come from, where have you come from, and where are you now? So give yourself grace, and done is better than perfect. Don't always aim to be perfect. Well, aim to be perfect, but don't put yourself down if it isn't. Accept that you've done your best and you've tried your hardest, and then you can start loving yourself. And then when you truly start loving yourself is when you allow others in and allow others to love you.
That is beautiful. No, I agree with everything you're saying. And it is a journey, though, that whoever's watching and they do finding themselves lonely, they're finding it difficult to connect, they find it hard to build those positive relationships. And most importantly, not just to build and create that, but to actually maintain it. Because we do change over time, right? Even if our
Mhm.
situation has changed, like how we've had the pandemic to sort of test us in our relationships, it shows us who's really there for us, who are we really there for as well, because we're also looking at, oh, who's there for me, but how many have we been there for? We have to also look within, which is really
And
important.
have you been there for yourself? Have you been there for you?
Yes.
You be there for you. You be your own best friend. And also trust in Allah 100%. Allah will trust, only Allah should be there for you. Tell yourself, everyone else, all my friends, they will help out. They will be there in terms of, when I'm feeling a bit bored, when I'm this or that. But no one's going to truly be there for you other than yourself and Allah. No one's going to show up. No one. Don't expect. People will show up, but don't expect them to.
Yeah.
Expect yourself to show up for yourself. When you're really down, show up for yourself. Have a conversation with yourself. You mentioned conversations. How can you maintain a conversation with others? How can you have a bond with others if you can't have a conversation with yourself? During this lockdown, what we've learned is we're either going to love our own company or we're going to have hated our own company. And I'm hoping, inshallah, that a lot of us have learned to love our own company, have learned to get along with ourselves, and have got to know ourselves. Because that was the time when you actually have got to know yourself. You're not surrounded by everyone's energy coming from the outside. You're not surrounded by
Yes.
people's different positivity and negativity. You're surrounded by your own energy, and you are forced to face yourself, and you are forced to either love yourself or hate yourself. And inshallah, I'm hoping that a lot of us have accepted ourselves and have accepted to love ourselves and have got to know ourselves. And the best way to have a conversation with yourself is, sometimes it feels weird to talk to yourself. But you know what? Have a little diary. Jot some things down. Jot some information down. What have what do you want to do the next year? Have a plan. Have a diary. How did you feel today? What was your high today or this week or this month? And what was your low point this month? Have these conversations with yourself, and it will help you to have these conversations with others.
Thank you, Raghad. That's beautiful. And I just want to also welcome Syed. Salaam alaikum, Syed. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, I was stuck in the traffic.
That's absolutely fine. At least you made it. Regardless, we have been discussing a very detailed topic about building and maintaining positive relationships. We discussed how that, during lockdown, and we're still under certain restrictions coming out of it, how we either grew closer in relationships. And I'm not just talking about spouse relationships. I'm talking about whether it's, with friendships, with your colleagues. Even more importantly, Raghad has mentioned how we get to know ourselves without people around us. And then we have expectation for relationships when actually we should have more and higher expectations and work more within ourselves. Because when we have ourselves that is, having these positive internal dialogue, and on top of everything else, what she really mentioned, which I'm going to ask you as well, is, having that trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because at the end of the day, a lot of us did find that when we're talking about building and maintaining positive relationships, a lot of us actually were found quite lonely. And when you are in a place of loneliness, we don't actually, address this issue. We think that there's people around us, but in times like this, we get to know who's really there. But even if they're not really there, how can you, as a person who's finding it hard to connect with other people, to build that close bonds and relationships, say it, what would you give advice to someone who is feeling lonely and they don't have those positive relationships around them? How would you sort of guide them?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, the lockdown, and it had many blessings and it had many problems for the society. It has definitely taught us a lot how to deal and tackle with the problems, and it has also led into further problems in many families and members of our society. I personally, when deal with the cases, I've been noticing how it has become more difficult for some families, and in other cases, families have learned how to be together and how to tolerate each other and how to understand each other better. Uh, Definitely, these are a kind of tests that we have to go through during our lifetime, and these are the tests that make us stronger in dealing the different situations in our life. What we need to be concerned of is our physical well-being and also our spiritual well-being during this
Yes.
time. While we are going through the difficulties, if we do not lose our faith in Allah subhanahu wa
Mm.
ta'ala, we have been successful. I have mentioned this many times that once Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam saw one of his companions in the mosque praying for his friend, may Allah keep you away from all difficulties and calamities and problems in this world. Imam Ali said, "This is a wrong dua. Nobody can escape the problems of this world. I mean, if anybody who deserved most of all to escape the problems of this world was prophets and imams, but they even did
Yes.
not and could not escape the problems of this world. So Imam Ali taught his companion and said that instead of praying that may Allah keep your friend away from all the trouble, which is a wrong dua, you should pray for your friend that may Allah keep his faith and iman while he or she is going through the difficulties and problems of the time. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what we need to advise each other. First of all, we should advise ourselves. We should not lose trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should also look at the teachings of holy imams and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which say that this dunya is never going to remain in similar way for us forever. I mean, the difficulties are not going to stay forever, and the happiness is also not going to stay forever. In both conditions, we have to be ready for the different circumstances that may happen later on. So, I mean, this is what Islamic teaching, not only Islamic, any divine religion would teach one to do that. Or even if you don't follow any religion, moral, ethical values of human beings would teach you to be calm and deal with the situation in a way that you don't harm yourself and don't harm others.
Thank you so much, Syed. You always say things so eloquently and put things into perspective very simply. And of course, it did echo what Raghad had mentioned earlier about having faith. What was your response to that, Raghad? What else would you like to add to this conversation with regards to building and maintaining positivity?
Yeah, so as the Sayed has mentioned, as you know, in the lockdown, we have been faced with our, direct family. So whether you're living with your spouse and your children, whether you're living with your parents, you are suddenly faced with this person, with initially with the pandemic 24/7, so we're used to, going about our day, coming back home in the evenings, and just, doing what we need to do, and we're used to our routine. Suddenly, the rug was pulled from under us. Suddenly, we are spending a lot of time with one person or with, just a few people. And it's so easy to nitpick when you're in that situation. It's so easy to look at every single flaw this person has done. It's so easy to look at, oh my goodness, my husband has left his cup of tea again. Oh, this is awful. I just can't be with this person anymore. He's just so messy and he's inconsiderate. He doesn't care about me. I'm his, he wants me to do everything for him. It's so easy to look at it like that. Suddenly you're noticing habits about your other half, whether it's your husband or your wife, or even your own children. Suddenly you're noticing things that you didn't realize that they were, they did during the day. So it's very easy to be to think negatively in that situation. And as well, with the pandemic, and you're already stressed out as it is, you're kind of already thinking negative. So it's very important. Fahima, once you told me, your train of thoughts lead to your actions, and that's what leads to habits. So if you have a
Yes.
negative train of thoughts, then your actions are going to be a negative, and then that's going to turn into a negative habit. So then you're going just to be a person who's always pessimistic, and not talking nicely to your children, not talking nicely to your husband, and that's going to be a roller coaster, and it leads to a breakdown in relationships, or it leads to a breakdown in communication. That's what leads to, that's mahalla, worst case scenario. So what you can do is just turn it around. Turn that around. Okay, your husband, he's not very great at picking up his cups after he drinks his tea. Your wife is not great at putting the kids to sleep at the right time. That's fine, but remember yesterday when he done this. Remember yesterday when your wife made you this really nice meal. Remember yesterday your husband, helped you out in bedtime routine, or putting taking the kids out of the bath or something like that. Try and go back to the last positive memory of that person, and think of that. Think about, this person is a good person. This person, he has these good traits, and build on them. Thank that person. Instead of always going back and just mentioning the negatives, mentioning the things that you don't like about the person, go back and mention all the good things. Mention all the positive. Be thankful. Thankful to Allah, of course, first of all, that Allah has blessed you with a family during this pandemic, because a lot of people were extremely lonely, as you mentioned. And secondly, thank the person. Because when you thank the person, the other person, as we said, it's an interpretation. When you thank that person is going to feel appreciated. And then his actions will come from a place that he knows that he feels appreciated, or she knows that she feels appreciated. Do you know, when your wife makes you a meal and you thank her for it, do you know what she's going to want to do? The next day, she's going to want to make you an even nicer meal. That's how it is. And when you
We
thank your
definitely need
husband,
Raghad in our consultations, Syed, don't we? When you having your consultations with divorce, and I'm having mines with, the aftermath. I think you've given some really important points and tips there, which we do forget. And it's so simple, but it's so difficult for individuals to do. Yeah.
It's very difficult, but you have to train your mind. You have to train your mind.
Yes.
No, you block them out. You block those negative thoughts out. It's very difficult, and it takes time. It takes years. But in the pandemic, we had to do it really quickly. We had to learn really quickly, and it's not just with spouse, even with children. How are you coming across to your children? Suddenly,
Yeah.
you're not just their mom anymore. Suddenly, now you're their teacher. You're their sport coach. You're their friend. How are you coming across to those children? Be mindful of your actions. Make sure that when you're speaking to them, look at them in the eye and communicate what you're trying to say. Be aware of your tone. Don't always be, turn towards them. Don't be always turning away from them while you're having a conversation. Because, when you turn to them and when you look at them, whether it's your children, your spouse, or your parent, when you turn to them and you look at them, it gives them importance. It makes them feel they're important. That what you're telling them or what they're telling you, you're listening to it, and they mean something to you. They're not just there in the background. And that will make a huge difference in terms of communication, understanding, and having a positive bond within a family household.
Those are
So,
very, very strategic tips, by the way. I love that, Raghad, because those are non-verbal cues. It's not just what you say in words, it's your body, your tone, like you mentioned as well. I just want to quickly move on with regards to, we've discussed a lot when it comes to family. I'm talking about, okay, sometimes when it comes to outside your family, and I think friendship's the really important thing, because again, we tend to rely on friendships to build us, and sometimes we don't have the connections in the house. The next best thing is our friendships, and that can also make a huge difference. Now, again, when there are so many groups and cliques that stick together and they want to do that over years, there's nothing wrong in that. But then obviously it does limit people coming into that group, or you expanding to actually, show that kindness to somebody else. And it's very, very difficult when you are used to a particular community, you form and you bond. And I'm not saying that we should always stick, and things do change over time. Firstly, Syed, there are people that even come to the point where they either stick so closely in their groups and they don't allow other people in, or if there are other people in, or there's any issues, they actually can even try to break friendships. What is the kind of rules on breaking friendships, and if you are involved in that, what is the actual outcome for that, Sayed? Because there's a lot of cases of that and we take it very lightly, and there's detrimental consequences for it. So if someone breaks a friendship, what is the consequences of that, Sayed?
Well, Islamic advice is that believers are brothers and sisters, and they should consider each other as a family and stick together and stay together, and try to give the benefit of doubt to each other instead of jumping to conclusions and looking for excuses to divide the society. Islam is against that. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ set this example as soon as he moved from Mecca to Medina and established the mosque. One of the first initiative that he did was invited every Muslim who had converted to Islam to join each other and declare the brotherhood or to each other, and instructed everyone to shake hand and join with each other. And there was no restriction, race or color or tribe, because the society that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was trying to promote and teach Islamic teachings was so racist and so mixed up and so difficult. He introduced this brotherhood and sisterhood in that kind of environment and made them everyone equal to each other. So Islam is definitely against any kind of division, and there are verses of Holy Quran, or there are narrations which teach us wherever there is division, there is hypocrisy and shaitan there, and who is misleading and misguiding one of the two, or I mean, the way shaitan misleads is creates ego in one person and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't let
Mm-hmm.
him or her confess the problem and the difficulties they have, and instead they start looking in the faults in others. Again, there is a narration which says that we can look at a tiny piece in the eye of someone else, but if something greater goes into your own eye, you won't be able to see it. So people tend to look at others' faults more easily and ignore what they have in themselves. So this is what we need to do. This is what ulama and scholars have to mention in the speeches and lectures and TV programs, so people become aware of their responsibilities and duties towards each other. And we should always remember that, especially the little ones, are monitoring the behavior of the
Mm-hmm.
elders in the community, and especially in this lockdown situation, uh, they have many youngsters have learned so many bad things and so many good behavior. It could have it had been an opportunity to teach youngsters and set good examples for them. In an earlier program, I gave an example of the youth and youngsters of today. They are very intelligent. They are very clever. They notice every single behavior of elders and they listen very carefully. We should not uh, imagine or think that, oh, if we are arguing or discussing something, children are not bothered and they are concentrating on their own games and issues around their childhood life. They notice everything that goes on in the, even a smallest breastfeeding child can notice the
Wow.
tension in the house, and they would start crying or trying to gain attention. So I gave this example in an earlier program, that I went to give lectures in America, in the city of Edmonton, and I was giving lectures during Muharram every night. So there was a 3, 4-year-old child with us in the car who was very naughty, and the father, while he was driving and concentrating to take us to the majlis, he shouted at the child and said that, look, if you don't listen to me, when you grow up, your children will not listen to you. So the child went quiet, completely quiet. And after a few minutes, he said, that means you didn't listen to your father. If you're telling
That
me,
is true.
so a 4-year-old child understood the discussion and picked up a point from that discussion. So we have to be very careful what we do in front
Yeah,
of our
no,
children.
definitely. No, I love that. I love all your stories, Syed, and you have plenty to tell, which is unbelievable because you actually deal with everything and more that we have. You know, you have an insight that we just have no idea most of the time. But again, I think that when we are dealing with friendships and when we are trying to maintain positive relationships, there are people that will come in there and destroy it. And yes, you know, again, there is cause and effect, there are consequences, and they will be dealt with. But as an individual, Raghad, how do you see this as, you know, detrimental, not just for the children that are watching, even some teenage children that are watching, or even just for your own soul? How is it that you would sort of like maneuver around this kind of situation?
So I would start off with saying, stop being what others want you to be. So we always, stick to our, as you mentioned, clique or group of friends because we feel comfortable there, and we
Mm-hmm.
feel that if we talk to a person that's a bit different, then my friend group will not accept me anymore. So we're too scared to step out of our friendship bubble. Um, we're too scared that we're going to lose our friends because we do something
Mm-hmm.
different. We want to do something that's maybe better or improve ourselves or grow or just get to know people that are a bit different. We're too scared because we feel that if I don't do what they want me to do or they expect me to do, they're going to leave me. But again, I go back to once you know yourself, then no one's absence can hurt you. So if you
Yes.
if you learn to enjoy your own company and you love yourself enough. I know I said that a few times now, but it just keeps going back to that. It just keeps going back to self-love.
No, it's
If
true.
you, yeah, if you love yourself enough, then anyone's absence is not going to hurt you. So you're not going to be scared of losing anyone. You're not going to be worried that you're not going to fit in or they're not going to accept you, because you know what, you accept yourself. And if you learn to
Mm-hmm.
accept yourself, you're going to expect everyone to accept you. If you love yourself, you're going to expect your friendship group to know that they can't be without you, in fact, not that you can't be
Mm-hmm.
without them. So it starts off there. It starts off with understanding yourself and, doing things for others because you want to, out of love. You're not doing things for others for love. You're not doing it because you want to please them. You're doing it because you want to please yourself. Doing positive actions, doing good deeds, being there for others, not because you want your friend to love you or to remember this or to appreciate this, because you know this is going to make you a better person. You know it's going to make yourself grow. And again, going back to when you mentioned about expecting people to be there for you and to show up for you. Don't hang
Yeah.
around waiting for people to be there for you and show up for you. You show up for yourself first, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us,
Mm-hmm.
we don't show up for ourselves, and we're waiting for everyone else to come and save us. So even so in friendships as well, be there, be the one that's going to be there for everyone. Be there, be the one that people can approach, be the one who can allow people into your group. Be open. And don't be scared that, if this person comes into our group, she's going to take my friends away, or he's going to take my friends away. I'm not going to come across as the cool one anymore, or you know try to have
No,
that
I
self
think
confidence.
you've highlighted something so important there. And I think that we expect too much and we want for ourselves, expecting it to be given by somebody else. And actually, not even your spouse can give you that happiness and fulfillment if you don't have it for yourself first. Otherwise, you're always going to be searching and they're never going to satisfy you. And people need to understand what it means to actually be in relationships. Because if you start with that, first, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fulfilling you completely, but then you can't say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for you if you don't turn to Him as well. We have to have
Mm,
daily routine disciplines and things in place, which are habits, that's going to give us this, with the self-talk and with our own actions, that's going to maintain this. So when we think and we're looking at other people, it's not going to happen, because we ourselves need to continue with these habits. And it's really an important discussion today. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. It's gone so quickly and we've highlighted so much. It's absolutely amazing to have both of you. So just a few seconds for each of you to end the show. I would like to hear from you, Syed, first, and then Raghad, please.
Yes, I mean, according to Islamic teachings, we have to start from ourselves. And if we do something wrong, according to teachings, we are oppressing ourselves. So we have to learn not to oppress ourselves, to be able to help others. And that's what we need to keep in our mind.
Thank you so much. And yourself, Raghad, final thoughts.
Yeah, I wanted to touch upon about you saying that Allah is the one who should only be there for you. Make Allah your best friend. Allah should be your best friend. Allah should be the one that you turn to at every good situation and every bad situation. Because you know what? No one, you cannot trust anyone with your deepest, darkest secrets, whether they're good or bad, other than Allah. No one can help you from the worst situation other than Allah. No one is going to give you the strength other than Allah. So put Allah first. He is your best friend. He is your number one best friend. And your second best friend is you. Try to always remember that. I know it can be very hard and it needs a lot of training, but I'm sure Fahima is great at, if anyone needs some extra support, Fahima is great at doing that, mashallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I loved everything you've said. I really appreciate, you being here with us today, Raghad. You've definitely put a smile, as well as been so refreshing and enlightening. Thank you so much, Syed, as well, for all your amazing insights. And, regardless of the timing, you've always given, your utmost, amazing input, which, it doesn't make a difference if it's 1 minute or 20 minutes. It's always such an impactful way of being. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you tuning in.